Yo, peace was good. Welcome to another song on my CD collection. This is part 81. The album, excuse me. I bought some CDs a couple weeks ago from FYE. These are all FYE purchases. This is it's no hip hop this time. It's just straight R&B. You know what I mean? So kind of different from my other stuff. But I usually like to keep it versatile. You know how I do, because usually when I do my CD collections, it's mostly hip hop, and I'll have like a R&B or jazz album. You know how I get down with that. But this time it's all R&B joints, so pretty all dope joints. So glad to own these. You know what I'm saying? But without further ado, show you guys the first CD of the video, and it is Maxwell's third album, Now, released in 2001. Um, the difference with this album is that obviously the production is different. Maxwell did all of the production on the album, which he usually does, but on the first two albums, his first two albums were a little bit more experimental sound wise, in a sense, because I forgot the dude's name, but he used to rock with he was like the producer for Sade, and he worked with Sade and stuff like that. So his first two albums had like that signature Sade sound. But with this album, it's all him by himself, production wise. The singles off the album is Get to Know Ya, Lifetime, and This Woman's Work. It's an okay album. It's not as good as his first two albums, which I'm a big fan of. Maxwell's Urban Hank Suite, Embryo, which I feel like is very underrated. Maxwell, he said in an interview that on the first two albums he didn't really feel comfortable artistic wise. He just didn't know where he was. Not to say he didn't know where he was going with. He wasn't comfortable with his artistic field. You know what I mean, as far as like the music and where he was going out with the subject matter. With this album, he was like very comfortable. He was he's doing his own thing. Like he's doing everything himself, and it shows on this album. But it's a decent album. Like I said, it's not his best album. I personally prefer his first two albums, in my opinion, and this would be like the last album that he put out in 8 years, because he hasn't dropped the album since because he did like an 8 year hiatus. Like he probably would do like maybe like guest appearances here and there, but he hasn't put out an album until 2009. So 2001 to 2009, that's pretty. Yeah, it's a long time, especially for the music industry. That's pretty big, you know what I mean? But yeah, Maxwell, Now, released in 2001. Then we got Prince with Controversy, which you hear in the background. This was released in 1981. Very dope year for music, man. One of my favorite years in general, even though it was before my time. But just the music at that time in 1981, and the movies that came out at that time, the TV shows at that time in 1981, it was just like such a marvelous year. You know what I mean? Also, it's the year that introduced the world to MTV. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Very dope album right here. No for singles, Controversy, Let's Work, Sexuality, and Do Me Baby. Those are the singles off the album. This album right here, one of the first albums to introduce, Prince with his with the color purple, because everybody knows him for the color purple. But this is like one of the first. I think this is like his introduction to that, like his fascination with purple and stuff like that. This album is, if you guys have heard Dirty Mind, this was pretty much somewhat of a continuation of that album, but with a different sound, but not as raunchy as Dirty Mind, which I'll get to later on, which I do have the album in this batch. But yeah, very dope album. I mean, you got songs like Sexuality, Controversy, which you heard in the background, Do Me Baby. I mean, come on, shit like that. But then in this album, he also talks about, he gets a little political too. He talks about racism and all that type of stuff and things of that nature. He has a so-called Jack You Off. I mean, yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about that. But good album. Love the album. I believe. No, I want to say this was Well, I was gonna say like this was the first time that he's worked with the Revolution, but the Revolutions they've been around since '79. So I would assume the Revolution, like I would say from the second album, his second album, Prince, the self-titled album, which I'll show in a little bit. Um, I don't know, but yeah, good album right here, pretty dope. I like it. Fuck with it. Glad to own this album. Glad I found it. It is Prince Sign of the Times. This the first disc. This was released in 1987. Um, the story with this album is that back in the mid '80s, particularly 1986, he was supposed to drop three albums, which were supposed to be a triple disc album, but it never came to fruition. He actually, he pretty much shelved the albums. Because that's the thing with Prince. He has so much albums that he shelved throughout the '80s and things like that, which is crazy. Um, Hopefully one day we get to hear those albums. But he was supposed to drop three albums the same year. It was gonna be Camille, Crystal Ball, and let me see, Dream Factory. Those were gonna be the three albums that he was supposed to drop that year. But he shelved those three albums. But what he did was all the songs he recorded from those three albums, he just put on Sign of the Times and made it a double disc album. So if you guys want to know how those albums sound, you have to pick up Sign of the Times. So this is disc one. Been trying to get this for a while. I already have disc two, which I showed you guys. I think like last month or some shit like that. I don't remember, but yeah, very dope album. The Ballad of Dorothy Parker. Oh my fucking god, that's one of my all-time favorite Prince songs. That shit, that beat is just crazy, man. I mean, very dope album right here. Yeah, glad to own this joint right here. Prince, Sign of the Times, disc one. This was released in 1987, and at that time, even though it was a double disc, it was sold separately. It wasn't like it back in the 1990s where they would put the two discs together. You had to buy it separately. I.e. Esham's Judgment Day album, which he did back in 1992. Even though they were released the same year, but you had to buy it separately, which it's smart, but at the same time it's like it kind of sucks for the fans because you gotta spend more money. But if you're a supporter, why not, right? But yeah, Sign of the Times by Prince, released in 1987. Then we got Prince with Around the World in a Day, released in 1985. This album came right after Purple Rain. A lot of people wanted. It's a decent album. I like it. It's not his best album. This album was kind of experimental, especially for Prince. It was recorded in 1984. Around the Purple Rain session. So there are some songs that do have that Purple Rain kind of sound to it. But you got some songs that don't have that sound either. It's like, that's the thing with Prince. Like, you'll never hear the same album with him. You know what I mean? Like, he's always been that type of dude, like, where he's always gonna try to do different things. You know what I mean? Whether you like it or not. So, if you want to hear, like, Purple Rain, you would have to listen to Purple Rain. If you want to hear Controversy or Dirty Mind, you would have to listen to those albums. So, but yeah. Decent album. I really like this album. It's not his best album, but the singles off the album are Raspberry Beret, Paisley Park, Round the World in a Day. No, that's not it. Paisley Park, Pop Life. Funny because Tupac, he has a song called Pop Life. The unreleased version samples that song Pop Life, but uses the same sample and things like that. But it's called Pac's Life. So pretty dope joint right there. So what else? But obviously that never came out because of the samples. So they had to redo it and things like that. So I think that was the case, but it was just no surprise because Mobb Deep has sampled the song Young Love that was supposed to drop on the Infamous album, but they sampled If I Was Your Girlfriend, and which they sampled, but obviously they couldn't clear the samples. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Yeah, so Raspberry Beret, Pop Life, America, and Paisley Park. Those are the four singles of the album. Decent album, not his best. From what I understand, this album didn't really get a lot of praise when it first came out because people wanted more Purple Rain, but you know, you already know how that goes. But yeah, Prince, Around the World in a Day, released in 1985. Now we get into the nitty gritty. Let's see how much time I got left. Alright, still got some time. Alright. Now, the creme de la creme, in my opinion. Alright. Now we got Prince's second album, his self-titled album, Prince, released in 1979. Yeah, this album right here is a bit different from his later stuff. Because with this album, you know, he was like more, his music was like more ballad wide. It was like more pop rock kind of thing. It had, but with a funk feel to it, with a like, you know, R&B feel, soul feel to it, but it was like a little bit more rockish, and he had like a lot more slow ballads and stuff like that, and that's the case with this album. But the singles of this album are I Wanna Be Your Lover, one of my all-time favorite Prince songs of all time. Why You Wanna Treat Me So Bad, Sexy Dancer, Still Waiting, Sexy Dancer. I think Bambi was a single too. But yeah, very dope album. I have this on vinyl. Very underrated album. Very, very underrated. I rarely hear people talk about this album. But on the first two albums, which I need to get his first album, For You, that came out in 1978. Definitely need to get that album. That's another dope album too. Like I said, this doesn't have that Minneapolis sound that, you know, it does, but in early form, you know what I mean? But it's not the signature Minneapolis sound, if that makes sense. It's like it has more of that. It has more of that. Like I said, that pop rock R&B feel to it. You know what I mean? That's what it has to it. But yeah, I actually enjoy this album. Very underrated. I rarely hear people talk about this album. Very, very dope. Last but not least, Prince's Dirty Mind, released in 1980. This album right here, oh my fucking god. Like, this album is fucking, is a masterpiece. Definitely Prince is one of his most underrated albums in his discography, and I rarely hear people talk about this album. You know, you got singles like Uptown, Dirty Mind, and Do It All Night. I mean, this album right here is just so fucking dope. What I love about the album is how dirty and raw and stripped down the production is, and I just love it. It just has like a demo kind of feel to it, you know what I mean? It's like unfiltered raw sewage, you know what I mean? Like, it just has that demo feel, and then I think that was the case with this album production wise, and that's what he wanted to capture. Because if you notice, his later albums were like a lot more polished. This album not so much, and I'm glad he did that because, you know, with the subject matter and the production together, it really captures that dirty feel, and hence the name Dirty Mind. It's like the perfect title for this album. I mean, you got songs like Head. I mean, Need I Say More? Do you get enough head? Can I get? Yo, crazy. Then he has a song called Sister, which he's talking about incest, having sex with his sister and shit like that. I mean, obviously he didn't do that, but you know, like he's making a story about that. It's like, you know, an incestuous relationship, and he goes really into details with that shit. Like it's fucking crazy. Yeah, man, the fucking dope album. That's what I really like about this album. It's like how dirty and raunchy, as well as the production. And this album is the beginning of his traditional Minneapolis sound. And for those that don't know what the Minneapolis sound is, it's pretty much funk music. But it's because if you guys listen to like a lot of funk music from the late 70s, early 80s, you would know they use a lot of synths, they use a lot of horns and stuff like that. But with the Minneapolis sound, what he did was he replaced the horns with synths. So if you notice, like, you'll never hear horns in Prince album. Like you probably will in the later albums, but in the beginning you won't hear horns like that if you notice that. So that's a Minneapolis sound, and a lot of people started incorporating that into their music. Like he set the he's a trendsetter, like, and a lot of people started following his sound and stuff like that. And because of that, you have people like Jimmy Jam, and Terry Lewis, Jimmy Jam and Lewis and stuff like that. So yeah, so people owe a lot of their careers to Prince. That's all I have to say. But hope you guys enjoy that. That's it. You guys know I got that 15-minute stupid ass rule and shit like that. But hope you guys enjoy that. Stay tuned for more. Peace.